Hey there, my name is Justin Wilcox. I'm one of the founders of TeachingEntrepreneurship.org, and in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the common mistakes that come up when you transition your class online and how to avoid them. The goal is really to avoid these three major overarching challenges that come up when you teach online. Number one, time management challenges for your students. Number two, disconnected feelings between you and your students and their peers. And then finally, disengagement. How do we make sure that our online classes are as engaging as our in-person classes? So with that in mind, let's talk about the 5 mistakes that can lead to these sort of challenges. Number one, if you have weekly assignments, like one touch point per week where students need to turn something in, like on Sunday, you are asking for time management challenges for your students. Teaching online, especially if students are new to taking online classes, they are not used to planning out their weekly schedule, and with all the things that are going on in their lives between work and other classes, it's very, very likely they're going to wait till the very last minute to get their work done, and so they're going to be cramming on that last night before things are due. So help set them up for success by having at least 2 touch points per week. Maybe one on Tuesday, one on Thursday, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever it is. Break up the weekly assignments into smaller chunks to help your students overcome any time management problems they have. That'll help keep them on track. Let me show you what that looks like. So here, this is an implementation of Canvas that has our curriculum in it. And we have a number of touch points organized by module. So we have module 1. You can see all of these things are due on module 1. And this is June 4th. That's a Thursday. The second, they need to go, on the Tuesday, the second module, they need to complete this. And then by that following Thursday, they need to complete all of these steps. So we just break up the assignments based on which touch point they're on. So that helps keep students on track. Again, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever makes sense for you can work as well. All right, on to this notion of disconnectedness. We hear a lot from instructors that they don't feel like they are connected with their students when it's online, or they may be worried that their students don't feel connected to them. Maybe it's reflected in their evaluations. And then students actually report that they feel less connected to other students when they're taking online classes. So the next set of mistakes is going to help alleviate this problem. And the first way to do that, if you are avoiding group work because you're teaching online, you are inviting that disconnected feeling into the class experience. Although group work can feel more daunting and it can feel more difficult to grade and assess online, it doesn't have to be. And this is one of the keys to combating that disconnected feeling. So if you build out something like reflection groups. Now, reflection groups, we use those as an opportunity for students to take an experience that they've had individually, that they've done on their own, and then get together with groups of, small groups of other students in the class to reflect on the experience they've had. And that does a couple things. One, it helps drive their own thinking on the experience a little deeper. And 2, it helps them connect with other people in their class. And by having them connect on this reflective, personal level, it's a deeper kind of connection than just like, hey, what did you get for this answer to this question, or what did you think about the reading? It's really about personal reflections. So let me show you some examples of what that looks like. So we have students get together in these groups of 3. They're called reflection groups, and in their groups, they will have already done some exercises on their own. So they will have filled out a survey or questionnaire about the biggest fears and curiosities they have about their life after school. They'll also have filled out a failure resume exercise, talking about the biggest failures they've had in life so far and what they've learned from them and how they benefit from them. And then we've asked them to come up with a 30-second pitch for a business idea. So when they get into their reflection groups, they get together and they share each of these elements, and then they actually write up notes about their meeting, and then they post them on a discussion board. So what this does, it gives students, again, a way to reflect more deeply, connect with other people, and then it's so easy to do. Virtually every learning management system has a way to group students together. And then with tools like Zoom, Skype, WhatsApp, FaceTime, it's really trivial for students to get together and into these reflection groups. So we highly recommend you leverage those, or at least that concept, to help drive the thinking and increase the connectedness. Another idea along these lines is to have students complete their actual exercises together, but have them turn in individual reflections. So this is exactly what we do in our curriculum and with our classes. We have some 28 different exercises students will complete, the first half of which they complete all entirely on their own, and the second half they do in groups. But no matter what, this is our assessment guide, you can see that all of these submissions that they turn in, they're all done individually, even the ones that are done in the team portion of the coursework. So we highly recommend you do that, so it eliminates any sort of free riders, and it eliminates some group dynamic difficulties. And then there are some ways that you can actually make assessment faster this way. So we've got some examples on here in terms of how we have students turn in their submissions, and we have them record quick videos summarizing what they've done so far. So it's a lot easier for you to assess, even if you're taking in individual group or individual work from each student. So I'll talk a little bit more about that briefly, but we recommend having students work in groups, keeping them relatively small, so 3 or 4 being the kind of the ideal size. Anything larger than that, scheduling difficulties can be tricky, and then you have some people kind of like hiding a little bit. So ideally, student group sizes of 3 or 4. Okay, mistake number 3: not using webcams. Again, the face-to-face connections are so important just for this notion of connectedness. So whenever possible, use your own webcam when you're recording videos, and then encourage your students to use webcams themselves. So I mentioned these submissions that we have students do. So in our submissions, we ask students to use a tool called Loom. It's a great browser extension. It's very easy to install. We've used it with, at this point, over thousands of students. And virtually all of them get it with no problems at all. And it's just an easy way for them to record their screen and capture their webcam at the same time. So you get to actually see them, you get to have a connection with them at that level, you get to see their facial expressions, and then you can capture, in this case, we've got a business model Canvas, a digital template that's being presented, as well as a number of other slides. So of course, you can read all the slides that they submit to you as well, but if you have them record these videos, then you get to see them, and then you also get to get a real sense of how well they understand the concepts. It's one thing to write up a reflection on an iteration you've done on your business model canvas. It's another thing to explain it in words concisely. And when you invite every student to do that, you're going to have a lot deeper analysis from them, because they're going to have to not only be able to write about it, but they're going to have to be able to speak about it in a concise way. We recommend limiting those videos. We provide pretty strict guidance that says they should be somewhere typically between 2 and 3 minutes, so you're not spending a ton of time listening to these videos, and then you can really quickly kind of go through and assess them, even if it is individual work. So check out Loom. There's other options out there. Vidyard is another option that you can use that does the same thing. Okay, mistake number 4 to avoid: using discussion boards in what I'm going to call the traditional way. So many discussion boards these days for online classes are like some form of read and regurgitate. Go read this thing, tell me, summarize it, and then comment on someone else's post. And this is not really the way that discussion boards can be optimized. Discussion boards are optimal when you have people providing different perspectives, as opposed to just like all reflecting on the same thing. And so we recommend using the discussion boards for personal reflections. So instead of asking students to go through some experience and then just sort of describing what that experience was, have them talk about what was the hardest thing about that experience for them, or What did they learn most? How are they going to apply that skill going forward? So if you make it personal, now all of a sudden we've increased this connected feeling again, because now as students read other people's responses, they get to know that other person better, and you get a real sense of, are they really taking something away from here? Have they gone through the extra depth to understand why we went through that experience? So for an example of what this looks like, let me show you what we've got here. So we use discussion boards as a way for students to reflect on their personal experiences. Also in those reflection groups, we actually have students put together and summarize some of the experiences they've had together in their reflection groups. For example, we've got an experience here where students actually, they are offered a prize that they can choose in their reflection group. They can either pick a prize of a $40 million lottery ticket, or they can pick a dime as their prize. And we tell them that, based on the tax implications and the odds of winning a $40 million lottery ticket is only worth about 9 cents, whereas of course a dime is worth 10 cents, but they still get to pick which prize they want if they win the game. And then once they pick their prize, they fill out a survey, and once they fill out the survey, they realize that virtually everyone picks the lottery ticket, the objectively less valuable prize. And so the game that they play is to answer the question, why is that? Why do so many people want an objectively less valuable prize? They write this up with their reflection groups, and then we actually use their responses that they put in their discussion boards as the basis for the summary of basically the answer. So this all has to do with the overall question that they're being asked is what role emotions play in decision making. And so we take the students' responses and we use that as the basis for a video that actually calls out, what our students got right, any misunderstandings they have, and then again we're creating this connected vibe where students can read other teams' responses as well as a video based on their own responses. So we get great results that way. And then the other nice thing about this is that students watch the video because they want to figure out who won the $40 million lottery ticket, which group provided the best answer. So that's a way to use discussion boards. Another way to use it is to use it for your pitch ideas and to form teams around pitch ideas. So anywhere where people are providing different perspectives is a great way to leverage discussion boards. Okay, finally, the last mistake I want to talk about is how to avoid disengagement. It's hard enough to create an engaging experience in person. Going online makes it even harder, but we want to talk about one thing you can do to help make that transition a little easier. So many of us are used to thinking in terms of classes, right? We have 75 minutes, or we have 3 hours, or we have X amount of things that we need to cover in that amount of time. It's great in that we have everyone together for that amount of time, and so we get to do a lot of back and forth interactions and a lot of hands-on experiences that way. The downside is that it restricts our thinking, that when we start thinking about moving online, we still can tend to think about okay, I've got this lesson and it needs to take this amount of time, and here's the start and the end, and then I move on to a next lesson. But in the online world, we don't need to think that way. In the online world, we can have many short interactions. You can have more than 2 touch points per week. You can have 5 touch points per week. You can do whatever you want. And if you focus less on the class structure and more on kind of these aha moments, these aha experiences that you create in class, and you think about, okay, well, what led up to that aha moment in class, and how can I replicate those experiences online? And what we've had to do is we transition and take our in-person curriculum and build the online version, is we've had to tease out, in a class there are multiple interactions between students and the instructor. And so we've had to tease each of those out so that they become their own interaction online, and they take much longer in terms of calendar time, because something that may take a half an hour in class because the teacher provides some prompt, the students respond, the teacher reflects back, and then the students ultimately come away with some experience. That can happen, in half an hour in person, but online that could take maybe 2 weeks because the The instructor has to prompt the students fill out some information, the instructor records a video, and the students reflect on the video. So that back and forth can take several of those touch points, but you can have multiple of those touch points running at one time. So, for example, in the very first class that we have, our students come in and they write out a bunch of post-it notes about their fears and curiosities after they graduate. We then have them share those fears and curiosities with other people sitting next to them, and then we form post-it note clouds around common challenges that they have. And then our instructors take those common challenges and then they map them onto their syllabus and say, okay, if this is something you're curious about in terms of, like, how am I going to find a job? Is the job going to pay enough? Am I going to like the job? They take each of these big problem themes and then they attach them to their syllabus and say, here's where we're going to talk about how to figure out what kind of jobs you're going to like. Here's where we're going to talk about how to balance your budget and make sure you have enough money. Here's where we're going to talk about how to talk to other people and how to interview and how to be interviewed. So by mapping those things, the students get to understand, like, oh, here's, even if I don't want to be an entrepreneur, here's what I'm going to get out of this class in terms of entrepreneurial skills. Now that same interaction, that interaction takes half an hour in person, but online, we tease that out where students will first, they'll fill out a survey that says, here are my fears and curiosities. Then they'll, as you heard before, they'll get together in their reflection groups and they'll talk with others about their challenges. Then the professor takes those survey results and then puts together a video response connecting the dots between those challenges and patterns they've seen and the syllabus they have. So that interaction takes longer, again, in terms of calendar time, but it creates that same aha moment because we focus less on, like, here's the one class structure and it has to be done in this amount of time. Instead, we just tease it out over about a week. So those are the big 5 mistakes that we see instructors make when transitioning online. And again, they will lead to time management challenges, disconnected classes, and disengagement. But if you do these 5 things, if you focus on having at least 2 touch points per week, if you have students do teamwork when they're doing online classes, but turn in individual reflections, you'll avoid a number of problems and you'll create a more connected class, as well as using webcams whenever possible to create that face-to-face interaction. Use discussion boards for personal reflections and the basis of any videos or lectures that you're going to produce. And then really focus on aha experiences as opposed to just translating your class straight over to online. You do those 5 things, you're going to have a great experience teaching online, and so will your students. Again, my name is Justin Wilcox. I'm with TeachingEntrepreneurship.org. If you have any questions for us, if you want us to take a look at how you're doing things online, if you have any suggestions, things that you're doing online, or you want to see more about our curriculum and how we do things, just feel free to get in touch. We're at, obviously, TeachingEntrepreneurship.org, or you can email me, Justin@teachinge.org. Thanks.